Hello, and thank you. I'm James Jack, the head of Business Owners Client segment for UBS Wealth Management USA. Last month, we kicked off our new Founders and Funders series with Lizanne Falsetto of Think Thin and the Holistic Success Network. Today, I'm excited to continue the conversation with women entrepreneurs focusing on how they built, exited, and supported successful businesses. I invite you to subscribe to the Founders and Funders playlist on UBS's YouTube channel so you can keep up to date on all the episodes in the series. Leading this month's Founders and Funders UBS conversation is our very own Jolene Caruso Fitzgerald. Jolene is one of our divisional vice chairmen in the firm's ultra high net worth division within Global Wealth Management. She oversees the family office consultant business, which consists of the firm's top wealth advisors who serve our largest, most sophisticated clients. Jolene, take it away.
Thanks, James. And thank you to our viewers for joining us today for part one of our two-part conversation with Tanya Van Court. Tanya is CEO and founder of Goalsetter, a family-saving financial literacy and smart spending app that makes it easy for the whole family to learn how to be money smart. When you think of Goalsetter, think Nickelodeon meets fintech. It combines the best of fintech companies with financial education and gaming that appeals to the whole family. As such, Goalsetter is the first money app for the whole family, giving kids from cradle to graduation healthy financial habits that will last a lifetime. Tanya, hello and welcome to Founders and Funders. I am so excited to talk to you today about your entrepreneurial journey. So why don't we jump right in? In a nutshell, Tanya, what is Goalsetter? How does it work? Why was it important for you to start this company?
So Jolene, first, let me just say thank you so much to you and to James and to UBS for having me here. I could not be more delighted than to have this conversation with you today. So what is Goalsetter? And why was it important for me to start Goalsetter? Well, Goalsetter, as you indicated, it's a next generation banking platform created just for the next generation. And when I say the next generation, I mean, yes, every single member of the next generation. When I started Goalsetter, people said, wow, savings and financial education and debit card platform for kids. That's great. Well, what age kids are you focused on, Tanya? And what they didn't know about me is that I happen to have a 15-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 5-year-old in my house. And so there was no focusing on one age kid. We literally created a platform that is great for every kid in the family. And then once we created that platform, what we heard from parents was, I love this so much for my kids. I actually want to use it for myself too. And Goalsetter then was transformed into not just a kids banking and saving and financial education platform, but one that the entire family uses, which is really exciting because we're the only ones doing that in this country.
Wow. So prior to funding your business, Tanya, you were an executive at Nickelodeon. What made the timing right for you to take that leap and become an entrepreneur?
You know, I don't know that the timing is ever right. Being an entrepreneur was a scary leap for me. I had spent a lifetime in various corporate and executive roles, and really great corporate and executive roles. I was at ESPN and launched ESPN3, which was the first digital video streaming player in the industry. I was then at Nickelodeon and ran nickjr.com and noggin.com, which was an amazing opportunity and challenge. And then I was at Discovery Education and led the launch of digital textbooks into classrooms across the country. The reason I started Goalsetter when I did was because my daughter said to me when she was 8, about to turn 9, Mommy, for my 9th birthday, I really only want 2 things. And I said, what's that? And she said, enough money to save for an investment account and a bike. And in that moment, I thought to myself, wow, if I can get every kid to say that, I can change the world. And then I thought, well, if not me, then who? I had this great background in media and entertainment and education and how do you engage and excite kids, but at the same time, help them to learn something that is really important for their development. And I knew that there were very few people in the fintech space who had that background. I knew there were very few people in the fintech space who were moms. I knew there were very few people in the fintech space who were people of color. And so I brought this whole plethora of background and experience and knowledge that so few people in my space offered, and so many kids and families in my space needed.
It really sounds like everything came together for you. And as always, our kids inspire us, right? And lead us to found these things. So what were the key steps that you took, Tanya, to get to where you are today to build such a sizable business?
Well, I think the first thing that corporate America taught me, Jolene, is that I was never an expert at everything, and was, probably only really good at one or two things in any job that I ever had. The people who were around me were the people who made me strong and who made our organization strong. And so the first thing that I really had to do was find a couple of those key team members who had the kind of expertise that I just didn't have. Our head of engineering, Gustavo Miller, is just phenomenal. And he's not just a great developer and not just a great technologist. He's a great thought leader. He's a great thought partner. He's a great product person, and he cares deeply about our mission. And so I think the first step was, finding the right team members. The second step was clearly, I had to get funding. And as is, told by the name of this series, Founders and Funders, right? That is the most important thing that you can do early on, and one of the most challenging things that you can do, particularly if you've never raised money before and never been an entrepreneur before. And so for me, that meant that I had to do a family and friends round. And my family and friends didn't have $25,000 or $50,000 that they could stroke in a check. And so I went to a meeting with the Stanford National Black Alumni Association, which is a meeting that takes place semi-annually. And at the end of a panel on entrepreneurship, they said, does anyone have any questions? Well, I made sure I was the first one to the mic, and I took the mic, and instead of asking a question, I gave my pitch. And I gave my pitch that I wanted to start Goalsetter, and it was this next generation finance and savings platform for kids. And that's where I got my first checks, from my fellow Stanford alum who supported me, who knew me, who believed in my vision, and who are still some of my staunchest supporters to this day. So, that funding was the first funding, but needless to say, not the last funding. We just recently completed a round of funding that included the likes of Kevin Durant and Chris Paul and Robert F. Smith, and just, extraordinary human beings and individuals who are luminaries in the realm of investing in technology, but investing in technology and companies that change lives. So we were really grateful to have them want to invest in Goalsetter, because we are so much more than just a fintech company. We really are a fintech company that is looking to change the world. And we need people like that standing shoulder to shoulder with us and arm in arm with us as we walk along that trajectory. And then we also had amazing corporations and strategic partners. And so, US Bank is one of our investors, and PNC and MasterCard. And so we had amazing financial institutions that said, we see what you are doing, and we see where you are going and how you are changing the landscape of finance for so many kids and so many families. And so they have stood side by side with us and invested in Goalsetter. And then finally, I will say there were many women-led organizations. In fact, our round was led by Astia, and Astia, stepped up and raised their hands to invest in Goalsetter after we had gotten some initial seed funding from Pipeline Angels, which is another very prominent women-led organization, and Portfolio. And so, we had a number of women-led groups that also really stepped into that gap of funding for us when we had, quite frankly, a lot of trouble raising funding from, the standard kind of Silicon Valley venture capitalists.
Yeah. Having been a female founder myself, Tanya, and I obviously went through that process, it is a real challenge, but it's heartening to see that you went back to your alumni base at school. I did not know that story. It's a wonderful one. Well, now let's turn it over to really what we see as a significant challenge, and this is that women and minority-owned businesses, in particular, they continue to face challenges when raising investment capital. They're receiving less than 3% of total venture funding. Can you share with us? And I know that this is part of your personal journey, but the challenges that you've faced as a Black female founder in technology, some of the lessons that you've learned, and frankly, what advice can you give to others?
Yes, absolutely. So when I decided that I was going to start Goalsetter, and initially talked to the venture capitalists and Silicon Valley VCs, what I was told carte blanche was, kids finance is not a thing. It will never be a thing, and so we're not going to fund you. And I heard it over and over again. And then about a year after we came, into the space, we started to see a number of white male-led companies who came into the space, and they were funded at extraordinary rates. And so then we went back to the venture capitalists and said, look, you said that this category was never going to be fundable, but now you're funding the category. Hooray, you should fund us. And then we heard, well, now you have well-funded competitors. We can't possibly fund you now. And so at every turn, there seemed to be a reason why we weren't the ones that were fundable, even though everyone else was. And it is challenging, and it is demoralizing, and it's, literally all of us can relate, right? We've all had a job, and we've all had a boss, and we've all had a performance review. And so I just want everyone to imagine for a second that you and one of your peers had the same job, and your peer, you got one office, and across the hall, your peer got another office, but your peer got 98 employees and $98 million in budget. And that was what they received in terms of resources to do their job. And you got 2 employees and $2 million in a budget. And then after 6 months, your boss came back to both of you and said, my gosh, your peer across the hall is so much further ahead than you are. What are you doing with your life? You start to think you're crazy, because that's exactly what happens with VCs, right? Like, they don't fund you, they don't give you the support, but then they come back and are consistently looking for traction. Well, how much traction do you have now? Maybe we'll fund you after you have more traction. Well, look, you didn't even give me $5 in the beginning to get any traction. And so that has been absolutely, the truth of our story. By the time we had raised $1 million, Jolene, 86% of that money had come from Black people, brown people, and women. And so while we know that that's not where the majority of wealth in this country lies, that's where the majority of funding for minority-owned and women-owned companies was coming from, at least, in my journey and in my experience. And so, our journey has been fraught with difficulty, but out of difficulty has been born innovation and greatness. And so we are so thrilled that we had those people who we could turn to, the women, the people of color, the networks of people that said, we don't think that there's something wrong with you. We think there's something wrong with the system. And until the system gets fixed, we're going to fund you.
Amen. Thank you so much, Tanya. I can't wait to hear about the rest of part 2. So for now, please stay tuned for a few moments to part 2, where we're going to talk about how Tanya views the evolution of her business as it continues to grow.